Today we're going to talk about a commercial RV tour. Hi, this is Jim from RV4x40.com.
And I'm Chris.
And we're here today to talk about a tour we recently took. It is a commercial tour in that you pay someone to set up the tour. It covers the cost of your campgrounds and most of the events you're going to see, although you do have some time to do things privately, and obviously those aren't included. So it's an interesting way to do it, one that we had done before by going to what was really more of a rally in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, at the Balloon Festival. And there the tour company had really set up parking spots in what was really a parking lot, and arranged for all the utilities and so forth we were going to have, and set up everything so we were close to the field where the balloons were going to launch. So that was our first exposure to this, and then we decided we would try a different approach and go on a tour that was more distance, not very much, but a little bit more distance.
So then we signed up, we were at the Balloon Festival for the Autumn Festival tour, and that's the tour we want to tell you about today.
Yes, that tour, since it's autumn and it's in New England, the intent was to go up and see the leaves as they were turning color, and be in that part of the world, which can be spectacular in the fall. And there are other things on this tour. There are several stops. You start in Maine, and then you proceed down through various campgrounds. Typically you're driving 50 to 75 miles between campgrounds. This tour is in the fall, and it is in New England, where you have an expectation that there can be some really spectacular foliage, and we saw some of that. The tour starts in Maine, and you move through several campgrounds in the course of the next 12 days, spending a day or two in each campground. There's a fair amount of moving, which of course is just as much trouble to pack up and move a couple hundred miles as it is to move 50 miles. So that's a relative part of this particular kind of tour. Most of their tours are much longer. Of course, they have tours to Alaska, which are quite a bit longer. So you need to go to their website to find out what all they have and might be of interest to you.
So we were really interested in being in the Maine area. We had never been there. Jim, that was one of the states he had never been to at all. I had not been to New England states, and so that was really high on our list as we were looking forward to this tour.
Yes, we had pretty well covered the rest of the 49 states, including Alaska, except for that northeast corner. So this was our chance to go up and get in some states we had not been in the RV. And as Chris said, the only state in the Union I had not been in my life was Maine. So it was a chance to go see that last state on my list, and for Chris to get to some of the other states. And we did finish up all of the 49 states on that tour, with the having been in all 49 states that you can drive to.
So we had gotten to the first campground a couple of days early, so we kind of had a little time to get settled in. But our first night of the tour, we went out for a lobster dinner, and that was awesome. I love lobster, but having fresh Maine lobster was beyond my expectations. It was wonderful, and we had a wonderful evening getting to know some of the folks in our tour group.
Yes, it was interesting. I personally don't remember if I've ever had a whole lobster to crack the shell and all that kind of stuff. I may have many years ago, but I had totally forgotten how one peels or attacks the lobster to actually eat it. So I asked the waitress if she could give me some instruction, and she was instructing everyone at our table. Some other people had not done this before either. So I was the lucky one in that, in showing me how, she proceeded to really peel the shell off the entire lobster, the meat. So I had the whole thing done for me. All I had to do was eat it. Other people still had to do the work to get there. So that was an interesting side to our first exposure to the Maine lobster meals. We did eat lobster several more times before we left New England, and it was always great. One of the reasons to do a professional tour like this is they have lined up a number of different things for you to go and see along the way. It's not just camping, and we had a good time being with people, and we'll show you some of this in the video, not all of it. But among the stops that we had was a lobster cruise, a lobster catching cruise, where they actually went out and pulled lobster up out of the traps that they had set. That was in Kennebunkport, and we did a tour. We did a bus tour of Kennebunkport itself with a bus driver who really had a lot of knowledge and did a really good job on the tour. So one of the benefits is that these are prearranged things. You can go or not go, but they're included in your package. So you've paid for them, and they were well done. They were well arranged. They had bus drivers. We had very good accommodations all the way along, and they did an excellent job.
The tour has a wagon master who makes all the arrangements and has the itinerary ready for us each day, so we get to plan ahead and know what we're going to be doing at different times. Their organizational skills are awesome, and they really help to make the trip what it is. This was a couple, and so we were blessed to have them. Also, there's a tail gunner, so he follows up the RVs when we move from one site to the other, and should there be any concerns or problems along the way of any type, he would be coming up behind us to offer his assistance. And he was always the last one to leave the camp to move on to the next camp.
These folks have done these tours for years and really have it down to a science in terms of the detailed itinerary they put together, and then the methodology that they use, that they teach to their wagon masters and their tail gunners. These are all people who've been on several other tours, so they're experienced at that. And one of the things that they do, if you've never thought about this, if you have 25 or 30, whatever their maximum size is, you have that many RVs moving from point A to point B, you can get a lot of congestion. So part of the protocol and part of the courtesy that these folks do is they give you a departure window. The wagon master pulls out first. He needs to get to the other campground to make sure everyone gets to the right site when they get there. And then they encourage you to just spread out and leave at random. So you're spread out along whatever the route is. Maybe it takes 2 hours or so to get everybody on the road. So you've got a pretty good sized window going down the road for other folks to not get bunched up behind 10 or 12 RVs all on the road, which would be really slow moving and really hard to pass. So that's just one of the examples of how the professional tours are done and what they have thought about in advance to take care of everything. So we're going to show you some sights and sounds along the way. Some of this is going to be still, some of it video, and so this will give you a flavor, I hope, of what we saw in New England. And there were some pretty exciting sights along the way. We went to the site of the Bretton Woods Conference. If you're not familiar with that, you should look it up. And we went to the Von Trapp Family Lodge, which is also a very interesting place, and got to hear the granddaughter of Maria and the captain actually gave us a very nice talk and signed some books for us and stuff. So there were some very interesting things there. King Arthur Flower was very interesting. We went to the Rock of Ages granite quarry, where they pull the rock out for Rock of Ages monuments. And in that same area there is a graveyard where the stonemasons have basically cut their own stones. There is some magnificent works of art in that cemetery, to the point we actually went back after the tour was over to take another look at it. So please enjoy the video, and we'll be back with you shortly.
As far as hope everyone's having a nice day, we're on to a stretch of nice weather here. I don't think it's going to rain until next Thursday, so you're going to luck out. Fall to me is one of the nicest parts of the year. Kind of warm days and nice, fresh, cool evenings and good sleeping weather. As far as our most famous citizens in town, George and Barbara Bush, they both passed away last year, unfortunately. George was 94, Barbara was 92. They were well loved. They were very active in town. They used to go to all the different restaurants and stores, and if you saw them at a restaurant, you could go over there and say hi to them. They didn't block you off from them. They always had a Secret Service agent maybe standing in the background or maybe even sitting with them, but they were very accessible. As a matter of fact, the year that Jeb was running for president, I ran into Senior 4 times in this restaurant right behind us, the Boathouse. Now, of course, I was at happy hour and George was having dinner, but I could see him in the background there. Another thing that George used to like to do when he was running his boat up and down the river here, if he saw a wedding going on up at the Nonantum Hotel, he used to park his boat and he'd run up and give the bride a hug and kiss, and he'd give the groom his presidential cap. And I always told people on the trolley, I said, you know, I think that wedding is doomed, because the only thing that girl's going to talk about for the rest of her life is, that's the day I kissed the president. And I got married to this guy, but I don't have any statistics on that, so I can't tell you for sure. Also on George's 85th birthday, he parachuted into St. Anne's Chapel up the way here. It was a tandem jump with one of the Army's Golden Knights. He was strapped right onto the front of the guy. It was a perfect stand-up landing. When he landed, he unbuckled George, and George walked away. And on that day, George said, I'm going to do it again when I'm 90. Well, I always told people on the trolley, I said, man, that ain't going to happen. Barbara's not going to let it happen. Well, it did happen on his 90th birthday. It wasn't as pretty of a landing as it was on his 85th birthday. It's what I call a soft nose landing. When he hit the ground, the guy fell right on top of the president, but he rolled over, unbuckled George, and George was really fine. I don't know if you've seen these people carrying their babies in front of them where the baby's just dangling like this. Well, that's kind of how the president was strapped onto this guy, and I think when they hit the ground, the momentum just took him over. But as I said, really, he was fine. Also on his 85th birthday, I had the privilege of picking the whole family up out on the compound. I had Barbara on the back of the trolley. I had W, Laura, Jeb, Neil, Dordo, and just this gaggle of grandchildren. And one of the things I remember about that day, good morning, how you doing today? One of the things I remember about that day is the grandchildren were all talking to one another. They weren't sitting on their cell phones playing ping pong or something. They were having conversations. And many times when I have a full trolley, I stand at the bottom here because the steps are a little steep. And as those kids came down, about half of them turned and looked at me and said thank you. Now, they didn't have to say anything to some old broken down trolley driver, but I thought it was a class act. And I accredit a lot to the woman who was sitting in the back of the trolley, Barbara. I think she ran a tight ship out there on the compound. Also on that day, Barbara was talking to some people, and she pointed with her thumb towards the chapel. She says, that's why we're having it here. She says, in case something happens, I'm going to take care of 2 birds with 1 stone. You didn't want to mess with Barbara. She was a tough one. Also up in front of the Bush compound, we're going to see a large anchor on side of the road. The anchor symbolizes Kennebunkport being one of their anchors in life. And the day they dedicated that anchor, they blocked off Ocean Avenue. We had all chairs out there, and we shuttled the guests in from St. Anne's Chapel. Several people spoke that day, to include George and Barbara, and I forgot what all of them had to say except for George. I remember him thanking everyone for coming. I remember him saying how much Kennebunkport means to he and Barbara. And then he looks out at this crowd of over 100 people. He says, most of you people have probably never been out to the compound. Said, after this, I'd like to show you the compound. Well, I can remember Barbara kind of looking at him, saying, George, where the hell that come from? Secret Service, they were looking in their notes, and it wasn't in there either. But the old man made the offer, so we put the people back on the trolley. We shuttled them down to the front gate. We dropped them off with the Secret Service guy there. The Secret Service guy said, you're going to walk in the front driveway, around by the main house, out the back driveway, and don't touch anything. Well, by that time, both George and Barbara had been shuttled in the back way, and they greeted everyone as they came by. And I just tell you that story to show you what a class act I think they are. I think it was a privilege that we had them in town for so long. They were never a fuss or muss. They were just great neighbors to have in town.
She's on it.
Yeah, Spencer jacket.
This is the Kennebunk River that we're on right now. It separates the two towns of Kennebunkport and Kennebunk. You got Kennebunkport off to our left, Kennebunk Lower Village off to the right. Okay, we're in the working harbor section here of the river. Most of these boats are lobster boats. There's a few fishing boats in here. You can tell the lobstering boats have their buoys are shown above, required by law to show their buoy colors.
Up this morning with the sun out at the lighthouse. It's called the Nubbin. There's a better name for it, but I'll have to add that later. It's supposedly the most photographed lighthouse in North America or something like that. Not sure about the claim, but it's a pretty sight, and with the sunrise in the background, we hope we got some decent pictures out of this. We hope you really enjoyed this quick look at our tour through New England. And it was an exciting time. We had a great time doing it. We would recommend it to anyone to check out Fantasy Tours if you're interested in this kind of thing. They do have special deals for FMCA members as well as some Good Sam deals. So check it out with them to see what they can offer you.
One of the really special things about going on a tour such as this, the wagon master and the tail gunner just go way out of their way to give us an opportunity to get to know one another. Evenings around the campfire were really special. Potlucks and different dining opportunities were really enjoyable. So I highly recommend the tours.
So there you have it. Thanks for joining us today. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click on the red subscribe button down below. That does help us out, and we appreciate that. We do appreciate all the people who are subscribers, and we look forward to doing these videos for you each week. We try to publish them on Thursdays, schedules allowing, so click on the bell icon. You get notified by YouTube every time that we publish a new video. In the meantime, we hope you will join us as we travel the highways and byways of America. And remember, like I always say, you guys, keep it between the ditches as you drive.